Okay, that's it. Mute it. Okay. Okay, mic's open. Okay, you should hear me. That's just
not be charged to use it later. The haves and have-nots should have equal and free access. Colleges and universities should not receive ECHO dollars. They have access to funding most other groups do not, and public access is limited. The YMCA should be cut out of the process. They charge for most of their services and access is limited. Coming up with clever ways to circumvent and manipulate the rules, primarily done pertaining to access, should not be allowed and should be called out when discovered. ECHO funds should not be used to pad the budgets of the recipients. Examples of this would be paying for repairs on neglected facilities or funding a park a city had already planned and budgeted for. Site visits, during and after a project is completed, should include a certified building inspector who can ensure the buildings and facilities were built to the specifications indicated in the grant and later are being properly maintained. And in the case of historic restorations projects, which I would like to see eliminated, there should be an inspector brought in who is certified in that special field. Stricter rules should be implemented that ensure the recipients of funds are performing as required, and when they fail to do so, there are timely ways for the taxpayers to recoup their funds. Substantial program changes should not be allowed. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. The next person requesting to speak is Mr. Tom Barrett.
That's quite a challenge to follow.
You can do it, Tom.
But well put, well said. My name is Tom Barrett, and I know a few people, and I just want to introduce myself. I'm a graduate of Stetson University many years ago, resident of Edgewater, Florida, and I'm a founding board member of the Riverside Conservancy. And I want to thank you all for your service. And we think ECHO is a great program. And I also want to just share environment, if you will, as being an important part of the ECHO mission. And I know as a percentage, it's kind of been a small percentage in many of the projects, although there's environmental aspects to the many projects. And so I just wanted to speak for the environment in that way and let you know about Riverside Conservancy. We're located in Edgewater. We're actually on the Mosquito Lagoon. We have a facility there, the Riverside Conservancy Center. We've been working there for about 5 years. We've done over 100 projects. Our projects include shoreline easements and living shorelines for property owners and also for cities, including working with the city of Edgewater. We also work with Volusia County. Our goal is to create an emerald necklace, we're calling it. So if we think of each lot or each parcel along the lagoon and others like lakes and also St. John's, but we want to create an emerald necklace where each homeowner and each property, including government properties, has a living shoreline aspect to it. The living shoreline is best thought of as the last line of defense before runoff goes into our water systems. So by having living shorelines, we're able to capture a lot of those nutrients before they go into the lagoon. And we all know the nutrients are the problem with the lagoon. Our goal is clean water. We do oyster programs. We're in the process of putting over 1 million clams back into the Mosquito Lagoon. So we're kind of reseeding, if you will, while the opportunity exists, and we're having some improvement in the waters. We have a mangrove nursery at our location. We have over 1,000 mangroves at our location. And in closing, it's about habitat, it's about nature. The quality of our water equals the quality of our life in Volusia County, and that's very important to our residents. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Our next participant is Kelly Mcgee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, honorable members of the ECHO Advisory Board. I wanted to echo what Tom Barrett said. Thank you all so much for your your outstanding work and participation and thank the staff. I've reviewed the proposed language that is in your agenda item, and I see that a lot of work has gone into that, as well as your all's comments, particularly as they relate to living shoreline and encouraging them and incentivizing them. And just wanted to let you know that we're here, we're ready, particularly when you come to review, how would living shorelines or a green infrastructure project, enter the program. We have a lot of ideas on that. And Ms. Simmons, I wanted to let you know that the offending Brazilian pepper has been eradicated, and our intern is pulling up Brazilian pepper seedlings with a ferociousness that I think is appropriate. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other people wishing to speak? I don't see anybody out there. So with that, we will close public participation and move to the next item on our agenda. We have the approval of two different sets of meetings. First, we have November 18th, 2021. Do any of
Mr. Chair, move
you have a
approval.
comment?
November 15th.
Yes, sir.
How are you going to do this?
Well, I would take them individually in case people have comments on the meeting minutes. Do you believe that's appropriate? Okay. With that, do any board members have meeting comments on the November 18th?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Can we just give another explanation as to actually what happened to that recording? Because we have an hour-long meeting where there's no written minutes, and we covered a lot of ground in that.
Yes, we did. And so in this room, there's a backup digital recorder. Downstairs in the training room, we had a go-to meeting, and it started the recording, and this is what we are guessing what happened. We hit the record button, but left the mouse on the record button. So when it was hit again, it turned off the recording. So we did not record the meeting.
Okay, so how do you approve minutes that don't exist? Because I know, during that hour-long, I could understand the one problem we had at the park. The only thing that I can remember from that is Sarah Lee asking about the over-encumbrance issue and have it explained by Brad. But when we were in that hour-long meeting, I had a lot of comments about the changes we made with an echo, about asking the applicants to provide local data. A lot of that was missing. Talked about exceptional grants again and how past grants had 55-page long standalone grants. I requested a lot of information from different applicants in terms of their boards. None of that was included in their business plan, and board information is always included in a business plan. And I know that after I requested all this information, Sarah Lee also requested that when applicants provide the information to try and do so in a timely manner, so we don't get those on the day of the hearing. And we did get some information on the day of the hearing. So I'm not sure how to move forward. I can't approve those minutes because we're missing stuff.
Well, I would suggest that you put in writing what you feel is missing from the meeting minutes and present them to us. Do you have any other suggestions of how to do this? I mean, we could also I would say we should skip approving these meeting minutes if you, and wait for your comments, and we can revisit that at the next ECHO meeting if that's acceptable.
It's fine with me.
Do any other board members have suggestions or comments regarding this?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I spent years studying parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules of Order. Now with the county, the county attorney over there may have a different feeling, but technically, the purpose of minutes is what is done, not what is said at the meeting. Now, we got these extensive, all these notes that we get in there, but technically it should just be what motions are made and whatever with Robert's Rules of Order. Now, the attorney down there may disagree, but that's fine. But you can actually make a motion to approve minutes and then come back 20 years later and change them. It's not meant that it's cast in stone forever. So we could approve these minutes that we have here today. And if there is changes, they can be made at a later date.
Okay, I believe Sarah Lee Morrissey had a comment.
I was just going, I'm, whatever the board decides, I'm fine. However, if we're going to delay approval, then I would ask that all of us try to recall what we said at the various points where there's missing, to try and supplement the record, if that's the direction we go. And that's all I was going to say. Although honestly, Mr. Alt reminded me, I might not have remembered otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, even then, it's going to basically be based on people's recollection of something that happened 8 weeks ago.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking. I think we're going to get into the same situation because we're not going to remember who put what, where, or who said what. And so even though we supplement that with thoughts or what was said individually, at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to say, yeah, that's what happened. Well, that's what the minute should state. I still think there's going to be huge gaps. I don't know. We were all there. We heard it, but it was a long time ago.
Again, is it all about what is done or what is said? I mean, are we required to put every single word in these minutes? It's counter to what Robert's Rules of Order is, but I know that government can be a little different and quirky at times.
Russ Brown, Senior Assistant County Attorney. No, I agree with Mr. Patterson's summation of the purpose of the minutes, but I also think it's up to the board's pleasure as to how you want to handle it. So if you want to allow Mr. Ott to, or anybody to give their synopsis of what they said in that hour that's missing, and then bring it back and approve the minutes, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. If you want to approve the minutes and then amend them with that additional notes from individuals after the fact, it's just what the pleasure of the board is, however you want to capture it. It's not meant to be a necessarily verbatim record. It is meant to be more about what the business of the board that occurred. However, there's a lot of discretion given how the board wants to handle it. So it's at the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we approve the November 18th, 2021 minutes. And then if anybody wants to make a change, they can do it at the next meeting. As I said, you can 10 years, 20 years from now, they can come back and say, hey, I did this, and the minutes could be reflected at that time. So generally in most meetings, you just ask if there are any corrections to the minutes. If there's no corrections, then the minutes are approved. You don't even take a vote on them.
So let me get this, let me understand as a clarification. You're saying we approve the minutes as they exist with their gaps, but anyone who has any comments or suggestions or corrections or statements that took place during those come back and we'll do it. So essentially
at the next meeting,
yeah, so,
or 10 years from now. If they want.
And Mr. Alt and anyone that has any input, they give it. I second that motion.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the minutes from November 18th, 2021. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to the December 2nd, 2021 meeting minutes. Do any of the board members have comments or corrections?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of December 2nd, 2021 meeting minutes.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll be moving on to number 4, new business. The first item on our agenda is 2022 goal setting decisions. Kendra is going to introduce this item.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm over this way now, having to do double duty today. So I just wanted to bring everybody's attention to the September 23rd meeting. The committee did adopt 2022 goals. I did include those in the agenda. I also included suggestions that were submitted to us by some of the committee members back in September or August, and also put in some examples of what had been done in previous years. So with that, I want to read the resolution of what is required of the committee, and then Jay, you can open it back up for discussion. So the resolution states the committee shall conduct an annual goal setting session where it will outline its work plan for the year. The committee will make an annual report to the county council on accomplishment of the committee's work plan. So that's it.
Oh.
That is it.
Well,
Okay, let's open this to discussion.
yeah, I'd like to ask a question first. If the adopted goals have gone in front of the county council and they were accepted and approved, I assume?
So the goals do not go in front of council. It's the annual report that goes in front of the county council that reports on your goal, your work plan, the accomplishments of the work plan and the goals you set. So we don't bring anything back to county council to the end of the year.
So when you say adopted, you mean because
The committee.
we voted on it? Okay,
Yes, the
I see.
committee voted and adopted them. Yes.
So today's discussion can change the goals as they've been adopted.
Yes, you would have to make amendment to what was already adopted, but yes.
Okay, understood.
I do have one quick question. On the goals, we did say developing the dashboard. And I'm just asking if the performance or the monitoring worksheets would also be included in the dashboard in any way?
Do you mean the actual worksheets tied to the dashboard where they could click and open up the monitoring? We can look into that. We don't have any, we have a few documents on there, PDF like help documents, but we can look into linking our monitoring reports on there also.
I think it's a great resource, and I think that would just be a nice added benefit.
Absolutely.
Thank
We do, so just as an addition to that, so the projects that are in progress, we require a quarterly report. And so from those quarterly reports, we ask them what percentage is done in design phase, what percentage in construction. So we take that data each quarter and update the dashboard for projects in progress. So you can see, the park is 100% designed and 70% completed construction. So you can see the gauges. So we do use those quarterly, but the yearly ones we can certainly look into.
That'd be great. And again, I really think that's a great big benefit, and applause to you.
When you say end of year, is that end of the calendar year, or is there a fiscal year for the county, or when are we supposed to, when is that date?
So it would be brought back near the end of the fiscal year.
So then the intention is to try and figure out how to do these before the end of 2022.
Yes.
I think I'm a little confused. So the goals that are on page 31, Those were adopted at the September 23rd meeting.
Yes.
In the items that come after that, which are correspondence from Mr. Alt, myself, and Mr. Surratt, is that a separate discussion? Or is that part of whether or not we need to add something to
Those were submitted to staff. So we wanted to make sure all the committee members had exactly what was submitted to staff. You don't necessarily need to do anything with them. They were suggestions that were given to us, so we wanted to make sure everyone had seen those.
So, okay, because here's my specific question. And it does seem like it would be a goal, or unless, the whole board doesn't want to do it, then of course it's not. But I do think, and Mr. Alt suggested it in his item number 1, that the nature of some of these projects are different based on whether they are E, C, H, or O, but we treat everybody kind of the same. And I had some similar concerns with E and H. So is that something that anyone else wants to discuss or not? And I don't know if I'm bringing it up at the appropriate time.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. How we get through all this, I'm not
Yeah.
sure, but I think it's consistent, and my comments were also connected to that, of the uniqueness of each of these things, and whether the criteria, the requirements, or what was involved with them should be uniquely addressed. And so, again, I'm with you. I don't know exactly how we're going to wade ourselves through these things, but I think the uniqueness of those require, I think that's a fine objective to say we should look at them independently, and as a goal for next year, we should do that. I'm not sure, we should address that independently, or when we get into the various comments for each of the recommendations. I'm not sure, but I agree with you.
Well, I think I hear what everyone's saying, and I agree. What I think what should happen is in the application, I mean, you could create 4 different application packets, but I think that may be way too cumbersome for staff and everyone to really get their hands around, and how long is it going to take to develop all of these different programs. I think the first step should be maybe adding a chapter to the application specific to ECHO, and what makes, where the projects, where they need to talk about, for instance, historic, what makes this historic, why are you doing it, et cetera, et cetera. And it would be a page that they could, specific to that category. I mean, there's other things that are similar, they're exactly the same, no matter if it's environmental or historic. For instance, the information about the applicant, the financial information, a lot of those things are duplicate. So I think what we need to do would be say, what is special about environment, or what is special about historic, culture, outdoor. And then the other issue too is a lot of these projects or grants, they overlap. There's certain projects that are, it's rare for one to be entirely outdoor. I mean, for instance, the trails. I mean, I would consider the trails environmental as well as outdoors, because we're preserving environmental land by having these trails. So, I mean, I think sometimes when we looked at the analysis of where our grants have gone in the past 20 years, it was, there were a lot of crossovers that maybe the trails program is environmental, but not just completely outdoors. So I think there's always crossover. It's rare for something to be completely, purely one thing.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of duplication and there's crossover, but I still think that that there's more uniqueness to these projects than are going to be covered off on one page associated. So I don't think there's a new packet required. I think there's more to it than more of an explanation of what is considered environmental, for instance. I think there's more to it than that, but not, not the application as a whole. So I think there's considerable involved, and I think part of it, and we've talked about it before. An example is access, and another example I think is what is adjusted on living shoreline. Right? Those adjustments that we saw here, that was great. And basically that opened the door to say, okay, that can be considered an environmental project, and that works. I just think my personal view is it should be going further than that. And we should be saying our environmental projects, if we want to encourage them, how would we do so? Or what criteria would we be willing to change versus a one size fits all for all of these various projects? So I think I stand somewhere in between a completely unique project packet for each one and a more thorough evaluation on the uniqueness of each of the letters. That's the way, and that was probably poorly reflected in what I suggested, but that is what I'm interested in.
David, do you have a comment? No? Jeff?
Yeah, I agree with what Jeff just said about these changes for the E are good, but they don't go far enough, and I don't think they explain enough. In the needs survey example Brad just sent out, one of the first statements is voters, voted on this to provide user experiences. Well, these environmental projects don't necessarily, give us a big user experience. How do you gauge that? So I think that needs to be clearly defined, or maybe better defined, that environmental projects that are going to help clean up the water and provide, better waterways for kayaking use or just water use. I don't know how you come up with a user experience like people going into a performing arts center, or even, some of the parks have a very good metric on how people use them.
Yeah, maybe we should leave it to the county to do that. In other words, if we said we think one of the objectives should be that we deal with each of these letters independently, and that the criteria and requirements should be evaluated based on the uniqueness of each project, that each of these letters, that we come back with suggestions that they would have that said, okay, this better addresses each of these types of unique projects. And we get into that. Granted, and they can go to whatever depth they want. And if the depth isn't there, we can say, well, we think there should be more. And if it's too deep, we say, hey, that's okay. But I think there's no way that we are going to be able to come up with, that, especially the uniqueness of these things. The uniqueness is what's driving it, right? I mean, an outdoor park's pretty straightforward. Environmental's not. And historic's the same way. So to me, I think it should be one of the goals, and it should be lived top line, which was one of my difficulties in what I put together, got into the methodology of trying to define these different things, and I think it was too much, and I apologize for that. But to me, if we stay in top line, and if we all agree that in fact uniqueness should be decided among each of these letters relative to not just the application, but the requirements and criteria, then let's let the county have at it and take a look.
Well, I'm not hearing any comments. There's this strange silence here.
I do have a question. I know it's not part of the goals, but we talked about the needs assessment. Would that be going out to every resident?
Well-
That's,
Can we wait? Because I
Sure,
think we need to
sorry.
talk about the needs assessment
separate?
separately.
No problem.
Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you. Yeah. So would we like to recommend that staff develop a form for each of the letters that would be included in the application? It would be, what makes this special, for ECHO?
Yeah, I think, I move that we put as a goal that we have customized criteria and application for each letter of ECHO, and that we evaluate an analysis that's put together by the county.
Any comments on Jack's suggestion?
It's a motion, so if
It's a
there's a
motion.
second.
Okay,
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, Chair, for the record, may I have who made the second on that motion, please?
Mr. Alt.
I think Mr. Alt.
I second it.
Thank you.
Okay, so basically, under this section, we had three members, Jeffrey, Sarah Lee, and Jack, all put in writing their comments, and they sent it into us. Do any of the three of you feel like have we addressed your concerns? Do you feel there's something more we should do to respond to what you've asked?
Yeah, I'd like to talk more about the different suggestions and go through them a little bit. One, in the case of Mr. Alt's recommendation or thought about the small grant application, because I like that idea in general. It may not be practical. So what I wanted to ask is the county, if we think small grants like that would work within the program we have in place, or is it as much work to evaluate and maintain those kind of projects for such a dollar amount? In other words, do we have a system that's accommodating a $50,000 project, or are we, or is it a gap that we should look at?
Well, in our most recent grant evaluations, the historical building in DeBerry, I mean, that grant was very low. It was less than $30,000. And it managed to go through the process easily. I don't think they were overly burdened with what they had.
Well, and maybe that's it. I don't know whether, Jeff, you meant that in fact it would be less burdensome to get the $50,000 grant. I'm not sure, but myself in general, I like the idea of dealing with little grants as well. I just don't know if we're practically covering it as we did there, or we need to do more in that direction. Maybe, Jeff, maybe you have that in mind.
Yeah, this recommendation came out of the conversation to open this up to maintenance. And I do not agree with, maintenance. However, in terms of a small grant application, we require feasibility studies. That's part of our grading. Whether or not people know how to do that, big question. However, feasibility studies should actually only be required for new projects. Feasibility study really isn't required for, shouldn't be required for, a historic, like the enterprise grant. There's no way to do a feasibility study, really on that. Also, when you say that enterprise went through that process fairly easily, they actually didn't, because what they submitted in September lacked a lot of information. And after we received the grant, I actually requested a lot more information because they didn't have information on the operations. That was all coming in afterwards. If we're going to do a small grant, it's those type of situations that we can probably address. This also, not to cross over, but we have the community cultural grant, or Volusia County does, that is super long and is as cumbersome as this ECHO grant for some of these organizations. Seminole County has a 12-page grant for that. And it's really designed for smaller organizations. So if we look at small grant applications, some of these organizations that are only requesting $50,000 or less, maybe we can really reduce the burden on them to give us just the main facts. I mean, they're not requesting $600,000 or $2 million, $50,000 or less. So that's, if we have a workshop or a meeting in a couple months, it would be nice to look at some of those examples for smaller grants, just to see what's the basic information that we need.
Actually, Pat would like to speak, if that's okay. Pat, we can't see you, but apparently we're going to be able to hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that my hand was up for minutes back, but I will speak to this. I do think that Jeff is absolutely correct that there is a need for a small grant application. I can tell you grants like the one, I think y'all are referring to Enterprise Preservation, and their grant was about less than 17,000, if I remember correctly. Those guys are hard workers, and they're not the only ones. I mean, there's groups like this all across the county, and they don't have grant writers. They don't have the expertise. And so while I absolutely support the application process, and I'm happy to see that we're going to continue, if I recall the motion correctly previously, that will, in fact, the application will be processed and we're just going to add information on the different elements. I like that idea, but I also like the idea of recognizing that there are small organizations that don't have the resources as somebody like the Ocean Center had when they put their grants in, and that we need to be sensitive to that. So considering a small, I would support considering a small grant application. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Stacy, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just had a question. How would it look? Would we have a separate period of time for the small grant, or what were you thinking? Elaborate a little more on your plan, please.
Anything. I know the state has a small grants program, and that small grants program is actually designed so smaller organizations aren't competing against larger organizations. There's a separate set of funds that goes into a separate pool. So if you're under $500,000 or whatever, you're not competing against us, $20 million. Again, those thoughts came out of the request to look at possible maintenance type of grants. Again, I do not agree with maintenance of a facility after we have funded them and the organization is supposed to maintain it. And, if it is a small grant and it's only 12 pages long, like the Seminole County grant, then I'm not sure if they need to participate in the actual grant application, calendar. Maybe they could, if they need one, as an emergency or whatever, we could hear it at any time. I don't know, I'm just talking.
I think they should follow the calendar. I think if they could just submit anytime, that's going to cause a tremendous amount of work that's not necessarily in sync with what's going on. I mean, I think a small grants application, it sounds like it's a good idea, but I don't think creating a separate calendar of when they can submit I think that's going to cause confusion.
Yeah, and that's something that we work out, in a workshop.
Well, maybe we should just have it as because all we're talking about here is a goal. And maybe what our goal should be is to explore a small grant application of $50,000 or less and put together what those requirements are and keep it as short as possible. So I think, so I'll move that we explore a small grant application at under $50,000.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, good. We have a first, a second.
I have a
Any
question.
further comment before we vote?
Yeah, would still a match, they still have to match it, or, okay, still would require, so 50,000, they would have to put up 25,000.
50%.
Well, it also depends.
Whatever it would be, I'm thinking, I'm not sure it's a straight grant. I'm assuming it's a match.
Okay.
Well, you're also getting into, we changed the requirements for the smaller not-for-profits.
Right.
They're allowed to use a different percentage for their application. So in certain ways, we've already started moving towards that in the normal application process. So
True, but this is connected to the dollar amount versus the nonprofits. But I think they will a lot of times be smaller amounts, but let's explore it. I think we look at that and whether we end up, maybe it's the same as the nonprofit as far as a sliding scale, but I think a match has to be incorporated. I'm not suggesting these are straight grants. I mean, they need to be matched.
are there any other comments? We have a first and a second. Would the board care to vote on this? All in favor of the small grant application?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Is there anything else we need to discuss on Jeffrey's letter? You asked to reformat the annual reports.
I wanted to ask about that. Hadn't we already done that? Wasn't the reports already reworked? Nope. Okay. I think I guess it's a good idea. I find that kind of a weak element as a goal. I mean, I'm looking for bigger goals and reworking and reformatting the annual reports. Okay. I mean, I have no complaint about it.
Yeah, I mean, currently it's, once again, it's one size fits all on that annual report. And if you're trying to get information on the organization and how they're performing based on their grant, if you've read the annual reports, it's very difficult to decipher that. And even speaking with some of the organizations, you have, community theater having questions pertaining to Parks and Rec on their annual report. It's just, that could be reformatted. So however they are, applying for a grant, they have an annual report for. It shouldn't be that difficult.
And I might suggest that we review, in the next meeting, we review the annual report separately. I don't think anyone is 100% ready to discuss that right now. That's just my feeling.
Well, yeah, I think it's an appropriate goal and we leave it in there. And it sounds like there's more to it than I appreciated.
Okay, so I would ask staff to include the review of the annual report in our next meeting. And then the third comment on Jeffrey's letter was a needs survey with all municipalities, not for profit, the county.
Well,
Do you have any comments on that?
is this the time to
Well,
deal with
it's
the
right
needs
here.
survey in total?
I would say, we should just go through these one by one and get it over with.
Fair enough. Go ahead, Stacy.
Just my question was, who would be the recipients of that needs assessment or the survey?
So our initial conversations, that would be broad-based. So it'd be citizens, municipalities, nonprofits, anyone who has applied for a grant in the past. We would try to get it to as many people as possible. Yes, general public.
I have a problem with that. I think that's fine, and we should get a needs survey relative to the public. But I think that's way too broad. I think it's a good start, but it's not what we want. Really, to me, I thought the needs survey was really focusing on municipalities, the county, and nonprofits, and what their expectations are, their needs, their directions versus the future, versus what the public thought were a good use of ECHO dollars, or what they used, or whether we were doing a good job. I think that's fine, but I think these are really two different things.
Well, I think that's what I put, municipalities, nonprofits, in the county. Some municipalities are doing their own needs surveys. Orange City just finished one. Ormond Beach, I think, did one last year. It would actually be nice to, ask the municipalities to share those with us, and be part of this. Every 3 years, Volusia or Advent Health does a needs survey throughout the entire county to develop their health plan. ECHO was formed in 2000 based on needs surveys and meetings with the general public. So, I think doing this every 5 years, if we could get a format down and a questionnaire down, then, we don't need to reinvent the wheel every 5 years, but it would be nice to get that feedback.
Excuse me, Chair. Pat would like to speak again.
Yes, please.
Okay. I agree with the needs assessment, but I would take it a little bit further. I think we need to know what we have, not just through ECHO, but what projects are out there, what information is out there throughout the county. I think we need to have a needs assessment of what is in the county already, and you can identify it by county or city. But I think that it's got to be comprehensive to what is already on the ground, so that we know where our starting point is. And then look at that and say, okay, from that, we got 20 years of this, guys. This is going to be a lot of money, and we don't want to squander it. We want to build things or support things that are good for quality of life. But I don't think we really know what we don't know as far as what is everything that's out there. How many ball fields do we have in the county? How many environmental learning centers do we have in the county? Do we have a need for an additional, environmental learning center? In 2000, we said we'd have one in every corner of the county. Well, we don't. So that might be something we want to look at. I just think it's got to be bigger than just asking the cities what they want or what they have. I'm not sure when we say needs assessment, actually what you are searching for. So maybe I need a definition of that.
It's sounding more like a plan than a need assessment, because looking at what we have and what we think is necessary or the public is interested in, or what the nonprofits are going. I mean, to me, there's, anytime, and again, I'm the one that have brought up more planning, and in more planning, every time we go there, say, well, we need a need assessment to determine how we plan. But it sounds to me, part of this is if we get a foundation, a structure that says, okay, we have this many things, and then we say, what do we need on top of them? I don't know. It sounds like a pretty big project, to go through that. But I agree, it'd be nice to have that. I saw really the needs assessment as saying, okay, you go to the city of DeBerry and say, hey, what do you guys need that fits within the ECHO principles? And then we put those all together and say, hey, this is where it's going. I always thought of it as a partial development, not the answer to all these questions on where we should go, but really a start to that. And particularly when we go into a public position, which is, to me, real broad stroke, and how do you get the participation? I've always been concerned whether we're touching all the nonprofits, whether we're really getting a broad enough net to capture all the ideas. So I think the needs assessment is a piece of a much bigger view of the county and what we think we should be doing going forward. That's my view.
Brad?
If I may, for just a second, and Kendra and I have talked to some of our grant applicants about the needs survey. And again, we accept grant applications. So their thought is that we are expressing a need when we apply to your program that has been locally vetted by our local plans and by our board, our elected board. So by coming to you for batch, we're expressing our needs, our local needs. So I just wanted to add that because we're accepting applications. We can't go out and solicit applications for things that we think that need to be done.
Yeah, but we're accepting, but that has no long-term vision. It doesn't say what you're looking to do in 5 years.
But I think some of the feedback as well is we're a funding partner. We're not the operating partner.
Understood. But should we identify potential projects and take a proactive position on where things should be done? Just as Pat has said that, in fact, we think there should be more of this, scientific centers. And you're saying, no, we should not. We should not consider that. We should simply wait until environmental centers are presented to us.
Well, I think it's a grants and aid program. So
Sure.
locally, the nonprofits and the municipalities are deciding what the priorities are.
Yeah,
So,
they are. But I think that doesn't mean there can't be suggestions on our part, which we think are good and affiliated to the program, right? I don't see why we can't be directional in some of this and take a little more proactive position versus simply waiting for the input on grant applications.
Well, it seems like, I don't know, reading the guidelines about what the ECHO board is supposed to do and not do, I think there's a fine line in this reaching out and deciding that, we need more of something or more of something else, that in and of itself seems to conflict with the role, the actual responsibility we have, which is to review grants and make recommendations on allocations of money. But that being said, it would be, I don't know. I mean, what I was thinking about as I was listening to our semantics, what is the vision? And the vision is really, it's more relevant for the entities that are doing the bulk of quality of life improvements. And, that would be our municipalities, that would be many of our nonprofits, that is the county, but I'm not sure it is the ECHO board. Now, maybe because we have interest in it, and there are a lot of cities for sure that have been doing visioning over the last couple of years. You know, maybe that'd be nice presentation and or information for us. I'm wrestling a little bit with the desire for the ECHO board to create a vision or to create a needs assessment. I think some of the issue here is the semantics that we're using. But it's unclear to me if some of what we're looking for is actually in conflict with some of our responsibility.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Peterson.
Yep.
Patterson. Close.
I've been called that and worse over the years. I think this board would be criticized if we went out and started directing. We could be criticized for saying it gives the impression that we're out here pushing projects. And I think it should be coming to us in the process, but not saying we think that Ormond Beach needs something or Daytona or DeLand or whatever.
Again,
I think we need to be impartial.
Listen, I'm not trying to push anything, okay? And not in any way, but to your point, specifically, it says that we are to review and assess the ECHO needs of Volusia County community and make recommendations on how the Volusia ECHO program can best address them. That's our role. That's one of the things it says right here that we are to do. Now, it may not be number one, okay, but it's a general view of the proposition, and I think it has to have vision. Part of it would be the needs survey, so you'd ask the city to say, hey, you know, what are you looking at down line? Not what are you looking at tomorrow? What have you applied to? But what are you looking down line? So that we can look at it in total. And I'm not saying, frankly, that the advisory board does that. I'm saying that the county does it. I'm advising the county to do this, not us. So again, I think we would be criticized if we're here saying, hey, we need more of this or that, or we're going to a city telling them that they should do something. I'm not looking to do any of those things. I'm looking to make the most of the ECHO program. That's all I'm trying to do.
Thank you. I just had a comment that maybe we look at this survey and include the general public, which will help with the marketing plan as well. Just a comment.
Okay, well, are there, I mean, I would suggest keeping things rolling here. I would like to move to Sarah Lee's letter and address her comments. There's two bold categories, environmental and historical. I guess, Sarah, you could best, Sarah Lee, you could best address it.
I feel like the concerns I was expressing regarding environmental are being addressed in the changes as reflected in the guidebook. Am I using the right terminology? Okay. Okay, so I don't feel a need to discuss that. I do still have concerns about our historical resources. And, you know, going back to one of Jack's last words, I'm not convinced we are doing everything we can to protect and enhance our historical resources. I'm not sure what all that is. I would be interested in some sort of a presentation that helps at least me understand what is out there from a historical standpoint, and that we stand to lose, and how the loss may relate to some of our rules within ECHO. I really, my other issue is I really take exception to the eligibility of organizations that are primarily devoted to students and that they are not eligible. I don't think I was aware of that until Mr. Sullivan spoke at one of our listening sessions. And then, I learned that that's an issue that we have embedded into our rules. And I just don't understand why we would not want to serve children. And I think there's enough other rules that we have that the concern that all of a sudden we're paying for things that the school district should pay for, I don't see that as a real issue. But anyway.
Chair, Pat Norley would like to speak again.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Pat.
Yeah, I hear what my colleague Sarah Lee is saying. However, I think when we started this, there was great concern that the ECHO resources would be used to be building stadiums for schools, those kinds of places that were specific to schools and not better use for the entire county. I don't know if that still holds true. I know from reading Sarah Lee's comments about the historic buildings, I would be open to having a discussion on that. I'm not generally open to having a discussion on opening ECHO to the schools in general, but certainly the historic buildings, I think we do need to take a look at that. And how they're retrofitted, because any building that we can say that can be reused, recycled, is a benefit to the taxpayer from that perspective, that they're not having to rebuild. Of course, building historic renovation is expensive in of itself. But I think of some of the schools around here that have some historic buildings, but I think that would have to be well qualified. I think when you're talking about things that students use, I'll go back to what I had said prior. This is why I think we need a needs assessment and we need a strategic plan. Do we need some kind of a big ball field? Do we need some kind or sports complex or what? I think those are things that we should be considering as this program rolls out. Maybe not this year, but certainly there's a long-term funding flow here. But I think that, Sarah Lee, I think that was originally what one of the concerns was, if I recall correctly, was that the funding would be that the school districts had funding that was specific that they could use for programs that ECHO would be better served going to the cities who did not have that same kind of funding sources. And I remember specifically one of the concerns was building football stadiums at every high school. There was real concern about that. So
yeah, maybe we could just address the historic element within the H of the unique things, and we say that schools, are not, exempt, within the historic category. That's a good example of something that's unique to the historic part, and that maybe we should consider that keeps it out of the recreational area.
But a school has to be a 501c3 or a municipality. So they wouldn't fit into that category, either one of those categories.
There are some schools that are 501c3s. I just don't understand why we wouldn't consider any school. If for strictly talking historical, which was kind of, I understood the conversations and the concerns. And, my suggestion within my letter was trying to narrow down some of my concerns to something that might be palatable, which was limiting it to the historic resources. But there are schools out there that are 501c3s. And there are other places where there are cities that are owning and operating public schools. We don't currently have that in Volusia.
Jeffrey?
So you do list a lot of schools in here. And I'm not really familiar with them. Are they historic buildings that are still being used as classrooms, or are they just part of the campus, or do you know?
Let me remind myself what I wrote. I'm pretty sure that what I put in there were historic schools. Now, there may be a building on that campus that is not historic, but the original building or buildings is.
So the purpose then would be, as they try and renovate, rather than rip down that building, to preserve it and be able to continue use?
My point is, and I am concerned about historical resources. You know, I have a specific knowledge about schools, but my concern about historical resources goes beyond schools. I want to be clear about that. I'm not sure that we understand what all we stand to lose, but historical resources, you either lose them because nobody knows about it, or you lose them because they can be very expensive to take care of. And slowly they decay over time. And many times they get boarded up because you cannot demolish them, right? So they become a nuisance, and they're an eyesore, and they're a nothing. And now it's too difficult to renovate. So I know from my experience that there are historic school buildings in Volusia, some of which are still owned by the school district, some of which are not, that over time we stand to lose. And all I'm suggesting is, I think we need a better understanding of our historical resources and whether or not we as ECHO are doing everything we can to preserve them.
Well, thank you.
I think Jack mentions this in his stuff later too, that working with the historical board, Shirley's asking about information. I made that same comment sometime last year, that I don't know if it's a workshop or a presentation where they come in and really discuss what we have. I have likewise made that comment since 2006 about our community cultural grants. They divvy up that money based solely on budget, not on use, not on priority. So you have something like Barberville, one of the best historical facilities or whatever in Central Florida, all those buildings. It is so costly to maintain those and keep them up. They can't charge $35 a ticket for a show and have $1 million budget. So yeah, I agree. I think we need to address historical buildings a lot better than we do. But I do think it's a partnership with the other funding sources that Volusia County provides.
I agree. I think there ought to be a lot of interface, whether they be, within the county or outside the county or whatever. There are all these historical groups, and certainly they should be, like the needs survey. If we're going to send a needs survey to the historical group and say, what do you think would be good to preserve? That's not an application that we're sitting on. That's something that they're looking at down the line, and they'd like to do what they see as a need. And I think there's a lot of those. And certainly the needs survey as it is today, which addresses more of a public position, needs to be more targeted to that kind of entity, which it says, hey, what vision do you have for your organization? Not in general, because maybe they've got good vision. I don't know. I'm worried about that too, whether they're just existing and not really thinking in terms of where they want to be in 5 years. But that would certainly give us a better perspective on what they think they would need. And we could say, hey, good ideas, bad ideas, facilitate it. Say, great, we think that's appropriate. But that's one of the reasons I did this thing with what I call the priority area of interest and those type of things. Create a framework, a general thing on which we think is kind of important, whether it be a particular place, whether it be historical things, whether it be the Mosquito Lagoon, whatever it may be. But it was, to me, I went too far in doing it. But I think certainly these historical societies is a place where we ought to be talking to them to try to accommodate more historical preservation.
Well, I think this is actually a good lead in because the next person whose comments we need to discuss are Jack's.
Yeah, well, this is going to be quick, okay? Because I think essentially, right now, I don't want to really get into all these things. What I presented was too grand and too detailed, and so be it. My general theme is that we should be doing more planning and we should be proactive in our development and not push individual programs, but more directional in total with better vision. But I should not have gotten into the methodology I thought might get there. But I thought it would be better to provide to the county a way that they could do that. And so let's forget the priority areas of interest, which I thought was a poor name to start with. But a more comprehensive approach is really what I was looking for. And if after all of that, we're looking at essentially the promotional plan, right? The media plan, the marketing plan, which is already there. I think that's good. And we all agree with it. I should say, without question, I think it needs a dedicated website. No one will be able to convince me of that otherwise. I think to put the website within the county is not going to be adequate at getting enough exposure to the general public and people that are interested in it. The fact that we've agreed to look at customized criteria for each of the letters, ECHO, that's really central to what I was interested in, so that's fine. I understand the county's position relative to encouraging applicants to develop projects within our areas of interest, but I still think we need some sort of broad stroke, long-term vision, which I was trying to accommodate through this method. Don't know if we can get there, don't understand completely, and would not put in motion that we do anything with that. So our list is actually grown in goal setting, and I think it's more than we could probably bite off for this year anyway. I do have a new suggested goal that kind of came out of the entire grant process and scoring, and that is relative to the extraordinary projects. I think we need to go back and look at that completely and say, okay, what is the criteria and the requirements, and are we doing the right thing? And I think that's a solid improvement to the program, and we shouldn't have ourselves in kind of an awkward spot of saying, does it match our criteria or not? I think we should relook at that.
Yeah.
So that's the only motion I would have, other than what we've already done today, is to review, adjust the extraordinary projects criteria and requirements as a goal for 2022. That's the motion.
I second
Second.
that. Oh,
I
sorry.
can do it.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We probably should have started here, but we're going to end here.
Me.
Number 5 is the example of the adopted goals.
Pat had her hand up before you voted, so I don't know if she still needed.
Oh, I'm
had a
sorry.
comment.
I can't see.
You can't know, it's only.
Yeah,
here.
I will tell you, this is the most frustrating process I have ever sat through in a remote meeting. This is not a good way to run a meeting, guys, for those of us on the outside. Two things. One, yes, you already voted on Jack's motion and I supported that. I would like that recorded. Secondly, back to historic, perhaps sometime this year, because this is an interest of a lot of us, and if I recall correctly, the historic revenues are the lowest of the 4 elements, that we have a joint workshop with the Historic Preservation Board the county has, which has it's a very good board, and talk about historic preservation from a global county global perspective. We could invite the not-for-profits, and that's a lot of who run the historic preservation projects in to speak, and maybe from that would come some direction how we can enhance our history, saving our history, because I think Sarah Lee's right. It's going to go away and we're going to not, it's gone. Once it goes, it's gone. So I would just offer that as a suggestion that we at some point further in, maybe when we join our lull, that we have a joint workshop with Historic Preservation Board and hear what they think about where we are with historic preservation in this county and how ECHO could help better provide resources to those projects. So I just offer that as a suggestion. And then there was something else, but I don't remember what the hell it was. So that's it.
Well, thank you. As I was saying, we had the, at the end of our items here, we have the examples of adopted goals in previous years, and we've actually made motions to adopt different goals. Can someone read back to me what we've actually included in our goals for this year?
So I believe
We've
that
made about 4 motions here.
there were amendments to the goals. So one was to look at individual applications for each of the letters and how we can do that. You have to help me out, Kendra. The second goal was, or the second.
That one was to explore small grant applications of 50,000 or less with a match.
Mm-hmm. Small.
Yes, the other one we had was to come back with some language on exceptional projects and to make sure we're meeting that criteria when one of those come up.
So those were the 3 motions that passed, and I believe that they were amendments to the existing goals.
Well, I don't know if this was a goal, but, or maybe it's just a directive, review the annual report format for the next meeting. I don't know that was a goal.
That's already there. Yeah, that's.
Oh, well, I would like to make a motion that we add one more goal, because we don't have enough yet. And that one more goal be that sometime during the course of the year, we have a workshop with the county's Historic Preservation Board.
Thank you.
To better understand our historical resources and how ECHO might be able to facilitate better management.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, before we move on, and I think the suggestion was great, and I want to just have the conversation while we're here that my recommendation would also be to have a workshop or a listening session for the E. What I'm hearing are E and H are the ones that we really need to focus on. I know we have a lot of stakeholders out there who may have recommendations on how they can access the program or what their needs are into the future, like our ECHO, Volusia Forever Alliance, Dream Green Volusia, some of our other environmental folks that may have some input that would help us. So I would ask that, so when and it may serve as assessing the needs as well. So we have a workshop with the historic board We have some presentations on what their needs are, what they think into the future, what changes they'd like to see in terms of revising that H, and then do the same thing with E with our environmental stakeholders.
I'll make that a motion to include that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, with that, I think we'll turn it back over to Brad. He's going to introduce us to the green infrastructure discussion.
Yes, so at the previous meetings, we had talked a little bit about green infrastructure and living shorelines, and we didn't like either of those terms. We wanted something in the middle. And so we engaged with our environmental management division to try to help us find land somewhere in the middle. And what we did is we thought perhaps that, if you don't like green infrastructure described in the environmental component, we could call it nature-based solutions. They would have to go through the same exact process of every other grant. This is not a carve-out. There's actually would be additional requirements to ensure that, for example, Sarah Lee, I know we had this conversation, if there was a living shoreline, we want a conservation on that living shoreline so it can never be turned back into gray infrastructure. So there's additional requirements on top of that. Where we thought we could fit the green infrastructure in is in the project description. We talk a lot about sustainability standards, but we don't mention green infrastructure. So I think including that in the project description, how are you using green infrastructure as part of this project, in addition to sustainability standards? So we can use the nature-based solutions to kind of open up the environmental piece, ensuring that it meets all of the other criteria, and then but also encourage green infrastructure in the project description and having them delineate how they will implement green infrastructure if possible. So we have some changes in front of you, what we've recommended for the definition of nature-based solution, and I'll entertain any questions that the committee may have.
I thought it looked really good, and I thought it made a lot of sense the way you did it. And I think nature-based solutions is better for a lot of reasons, not just that it's more narrow in some cases, but because it's even broader in some cases. So I think it fits really what I was thinking, and I think what kind of we discussed at a different time. So I thought you did. I'm not certain that it accommodates all of our interests relative to to green infrastructure and all that, but it sure looks like it would accommodate most of it, if not all of it. So I think it looks terrific, and I applaud you for putting that together, because I saw that in the notes before where you were going to look into it, and I was going to ask, gee, whatever happened to that, Brad? And the answer is, hey, here it is in front of us. So thank you.
I do have one question under the public access, page 49 of that document. You kind of mentioned here that it's a possibility of it just being an external. Can you give some examples of what you meant by that statement there? Would it be gardens, or I just like a little more clarification?
So yes, so it could be only external. At this point, under the rules, if it's in so the current guidelines read that if there is a project that only allows access to the external portion of the building. So this is where we have some issues with historical as well. So is it enough to preserve it and let people look at it? Or do we need to preserve it and let people inside of it? Right now, it's preserve it and let people inside of it. So our projects, if they're, it cannot be only outside unless it's outdoor recreation.
So we're expanding on that.
We are. So this would allow for standalone nature-based solutions and green infrastructure.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think you did a great job, Brad. I've reviewed it. I don't have any comments on it. I think you did a good job of laying this out.
It was a team effort. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anything else to say with green infrastructure? Do you need a motion or?
I think so. If the committee accepts this, it would be a recommendation to a change to the guidebook recommendation from the advisory board.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the changes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? No? Okay. Excellent. So we will be moving past new business and now going into old business. So I don't know, Tim, now you're old business.
Apparently. Good afternoon. I'm Tim Bailey, Parks, Recreation, and Culture Director here in Volusia County. So last time I think we met, there was a request for me to give you an update on where we are on the Trails Master Plan. So that's what I'd like to cover today. And I'm going to see if I can manage this from down here. And no, so we're going to have to, you can change the slide. So what I wanted to remind everyone is the significant trails that go through Volusia County before I roll into the plan itself. So on your screen, you can see there's the Coast to Coast Trail, which is the light blue trail that goes from Tampa over to Titusville, Brevard County. And then the yellow is the Heart of Florida, which is probably the least developed of the three trails you see up top there. And then the red trail is the St. John's River to Sea Loop. And just as a reminder, these are all three priority trail sections within the Sun Trail program, which is managed by Florida Department of Transportation. So the blue one and the red one are significant is because those are the two trails that were selected among all the trails within the state to fund to completion without matching dollars. And Volusia County was a big recipient of that. So you see the blue and the red. We're probably the biggest gainer of funding in the state on trail development. So, okay, moving on to the next slide. So a section in the Trail Master Plan here is where we are, current trail development and the background of how we got there. So that trail section really goes into the Coast to Coast and the St. John's River to Sea Loop, which is why, those are the two major trails going through Volusia County. And I talk about, well, what's in the plan is we talk about how we worked together with our sister counties, both on the Coast to Coast and the St. John's River to Sea Loop, and how our commitment to the development of these trails was started. And so for those of you that don't know, there was a 5-county agreement that was signed years ago. I think Pat Northey was a part of that process that pledged that the St. John's River to Sea Loop would be constructed and the counties would take effort and funding to develop that St. John's River to Sea Loop, which if you're asking me, that's kind of one of the reasons why St. John's was selected to get Sun Trail funding without any matching dollars to completion. So I think that was one of the big elements that we already had a partnership in place. So the plan talks a little bit about that. We also talk about the future. So you'll see that trail that you have on the right-hand side of your screen, there's color codes. It shows you what trail sections are built, what trail sections are gapped and unfunded. And I want to spend some time on the unfunded comment. It doesn't mean that there will never be funding. It just means that they're not currently included in the 5-year FDOT Sun Trail work plan. They can't fund all of them at one time. So they're doing it 5-year increments. And so all that means when it says unfunded, it just means that it's not currently ready for construction within 5 years, right? All right. So, and then the next thing I wanted to just touch base on is some of the partnership agreements, which we have to, the county as well as the city has to enter into an agreement to pledge maintenance if FDOT or Sun Trail monies are expended for the development of the trail itself, then the municipality or the county have to commit to maintaining the trail in the future. Otherwise, they don't build it, right? Okay, next slide. So, and then we drill down into the county's portion of that. So what you have before you is our current build out of the St. John's River to Sea Loop and the Coast to Coast. And some of you may know the Coast to Coast in Volusia County is completed. So now we're really focusing on the development of the St. John's River to Sea Loop. And you'll see those shaded areas are not built yet. They will be funded. And then it goes all the way up to the Putnam County line on the west side and all the way up to the Flagler County line on the east side. I want to spend a minute on this. Most of the trails on the east side are falling within the city boundaries. So the county does not, we don't have any authority, you know, in terms of where the alignment goes to the city. They work directly with the residents. They work directly with trying to connect the north and south portions of that section of the St. John's River to Sea Loop that goes through their city. And they then come up with their alignment and they work directly with FDOT on that. County really doesn't have any role. We don't maintain them after that. It's all the cities that maintain that trail section as it's built. There are some conditions. It means they have to connect north and south, and they're within a 1 mile corridor of where that alignment needs to be. Those are some of the conditions that the cities have to work through. It can't really go 5 miles out and then 5 miles back in. It's really a 1 mile corridor going north and south that the cities work directly with FDOT. And they're working great. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, everybody's moving forward. And I will talk a little bit about the city's involvement in this plan on the next slide. The other thing I wanted to talk about, or element I wanted to talk about, was the alignments as we move through time. The non-Sun Trail funded projects would be funding with either local dollars, the ECHO $1.5 million year over year, or with other granting funds, maybe through the TPO or through the state or through the federal government on trail development that are outside the priority trail network of the St. John's River to Sea Loop or the Coast to Coast. So those will be funded with non-Sun Trail monies. We would be looking at other alternative funding sources, and we'd use potentially ECHO to match if there is a grant that we would need to match. Okay, and then we would try to connect business corridors, transportation stations, city downtown, and other relevant assets as we move through time. All right, next slide. And then we also wanted to include all of the plans, if there was a plan, on each of the cities. Some cities have a plan, some cities don't. We have reached out to all the cities. I've got most of the cities' information back. What we're doing with that type of information is we're pulling it into our ArcGIS database. We're then using that as a boilerplate of how the county and the cities can partner together on connecting our individual trails as we move through time. So I give you an example. City of Daytona Beach is connecting some trails, and as we move through time, we can see, all right, in 5 years, that trail is planned to be in place. We have a road program or something that we are expanding, and we might be able to use additional dollars or other funding sources, non-road tax monies, to develop the trail to connect to their trail, right? Non-road tax monies. These would be trail funds or ECHO funds, just non-road tax monies to use trail development. So that's important. So I don't want anybody from road tell me that, hey, we're using road monies for trails. We're not doing that. We're using trail monies for trails, okay? All right. The other thing that I wanted to touch base on is we coordinate pretty closely with the cities. So we're all trying to work together. And in terms of branding and signage, we have that a $500,000 grant coming up here that we're looking to add the St. John's River to Sea Loop signage along the loop in the trail sections that are completed. And we're working in tandem with the cities for that development. All right, moving on.
Tim, let me ask a question. In the case of the city's plan, could they put in a grant for ECHO dollars?
Absolutely.
that are associated with their trail.
Yep.
Are they encouraged to do so?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's an opportunity for them.
That's right.
For funding.
It
And
gives them half of their funding requirements to
Right.
do that. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen anything on that. You think down the line we'll see an application for something like that?
Yeah, they have, right, they have to come up with their own funding source. So right now, when you look at the city trail development, a lot of that money is all Sun Trail monies, non-local monies.
Right.
They're using free money from the state to develop their trail system.
Right. And that can't play a role with Echo. I know as far as match or any of that, we can't use that funding, but would there be, how would Echo fit into a city trail that's not part of the state money?
Right. Well, let me go back to the statement that you just said prior to that. So let's just say that the city of New Smyrna Beach is getting funding to create the St. John's River to Sea Loop going north and south to connect their southern boundary and the northern boundary to the loop, right? They might have an asset nearby that they want to build at the same time they're building their Sun Trail St. John's Loop that's not a part of or nor eligible for Sun Trail monies. So they potentially could use the funding that they got from Sun Trail as if they're grouping it as a project as a whole, to use that as match for Echo.
Nice.
Right? It'd be a creative way to do it, but you can do that. Oh, did they? Okay. New Smyrna, Brad is telling me that New Smyrna brought a trail project forward. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's see where I leave off. All right, so the GIS is an important file. So as we get the information from the cities, I'm encouraging them to deliver it to us in an ArcGIS format. It makes it easy for the IT folks then to upload it into our program. And then in the master plan, you'll see all the color codes within the cities on what's developed, what's not developed, what's funded, what's not funded. As well as all the county trails. So what's funded, what's not funded, where we at, where we going forward. Okay, all right, moving on to the next slide. The other part that's important, and when we met last time, that $1.5 million will also go into the elements that Sun Trail won't pay for. So these are the trail amenity plan, which is included in the plan. It identifies where the amenities are planned to be placed or built or developed, how much they are, and what year we're planning on having them put in place, right? And that would be not using Sun Trail monies, because Sun Trail, every part of that amenity plan is not eligible for Sun Trail money. So we'd have to use local monies, Echo dollars, or other granting funds to build those amenities. So that plan will be included in the document as well, including location costs and funding sources and the years that we're planning on putting into place. The marketing plan, so on branding, so we have spent a lot of time on branding the coast to coast and the St. John's River to Sea Loop. And what you see on the right-hand side of your screen is the result of that. We had met with initially all the partners on the coast to coast, and that design, that color palette, that setup was all approved and embraced by all of the counties on the coast to coast. Volusia County is first out of the gate on developing this wayfinding package as well as maps. They have all been provided the information that we used to develop and got approved through FDOT. All they have to do is just build it in their own backyard. And the intention is to have that sign uniform from Brevard County all the way to Tampa. So when you're on that trail, you know that it's familiar, no matter what county you're in, you know you're on the coast to coast trail. And we've again worked with the counties on that. We've done the same thing with the St. John's River to Sea Loop. We've shopped that. The logo was shopped and embraced by all of those players that are on the loop, which is on the bottom of that wayfinding sign that you see there. So all of that intention was to brand both the loop and the coast to coast. Also in the plan is a description of users, age of the users, what percentage of are say 65 and older, right? And the gender, what are they doing? Are they running? Are they biking? Are they walking? Are they rollerblading? And then the frequency rates. What time of day are they using the trail? Are they using it on a weekday versus a weekend? All that helps us with just planning and gives us an idea of who our users are and when they're using the trail. And then in terms of partnerships with the 3 tourist development centers, we have the strongest partnership with Southwest Volusia County. We work really close in tandem. We work on events, run 5Ks, and doing connections with eco tour guides and getting heads and beds in the Southwest Volusia County. And all that is connected via the Welcome Center, and I'll tell you about that on the next slide. And then partnerships with the nonprofit groups. A big partner with us is the St. John's River to Sea Loop Alliance, which I believe Ms. Northey is associated with, and we work closely with that group, and they've been a big help, and they do a lot of work for us, and they've got a great website, and they're probably, in my opinion, one of the better volunteer groups in all of Volusia County. They do a great job. And then partnerships with associated counties and cities. So we are working with Seminole County on, as soon as they have some of their one section of trail that's in Sanford area completed, we're working on a marathon around the whole lake, Lake George. We'll be coordinating with City of Sanford and Seminole County on running that. And then our social media platforms, which would include Facebook and Twitter and that kind of thing. All right, moving on to the next slide.
Wait.
Yeah.
In the case of the River to Sea Loop Alliance,
yeah.
How does that website work? Like who manages it? Who does the social media?
Yeah, so that's managed by that group. They have their own IT person, their own president, and actually if you go to that site, right?
Yes.
They've worked with Stetson on creating farm to table tab, right, along the St. John's River to Sea Loop. So you're able to click on a tab and it'll show you where exactly it is on the loop and has pictures and descriptions.
Yeah, it's terrific. I looked at it and I thought it was
right.
I thought it was a great thing and terrific branding.
Yeah.
And they pay for it themselves,
That's right.
the Alliance?
Yep.
And is it a nonprofit?
It is a nonprofit. Yeah.
Okay. And this is a minor point, but I noticed that Volusia County was listed as a partner.
Yeah.
But Echo was not.
Well, Echo is a part of Volusia County, so I mean, we could separate it out.
Well, I mean, we're a part of the trail system of Volusia County as well, right, as a participant, but it was not mentioned. Volusia County was placed there.
We'll see what we can do about adding Echo in there and making sure Echo gets marketing as
Gets
well.
its due.
Yeah, sure. Right. Okay, moving on. Another section in here is our Trail Mobile application. The reason I bring this up is not everybody is aware that we have a Trails mobile app. It also includes all of our parks. I like it because while you're on a trail, and if you hit that button near me, it'll give you the 25 nearest recreational assets that are near you on the trail. And it's not just based on Volusia County assets, it's city assets, nonprofit assets, and Volusia County assets. So, and then if you'd like to check it out, you just hit the map button and it'll navigate you right to that location, talk to you, tell you how long it'll take you to get there.
Hey, Tim?
Yeah.
Who maintains that and how often is it updated?
Okay, so we, the county, maintain it. We have a contract with a vendor that helped us develop the application. And then we work with them yearly on an update, right? So it's ready for another update. There are certain sections in there that pathways, like for instance, I was just looking at recently, aerial pathway is a pathway that was just recently built, right? So that needs to be added to the application. And the goal is that the application pathway language matches up to the master plan, which matches up to our website, which matches up to our task sheets. When I say task sheets, see, we keep track of all maintenance activity by pathway, by group, by individual that's doing the work, whether it be mowing the trail, emptying the trash can, blowing off the trail, trimming the trees. We log all those costs, who did it, how long they did it for, where they did it at, and pathways is how we track all that data. So I'm able to run a report on how much it costs us to maintain a trail, how much does it cost to maintain aerial pathway, right? All that's put into a database and we're able to run reports on it. Okay, so Trails Welcome Center. So for those of you that haven't been there, it's a great source for trail information. It's staffed every day but Monday. We're closed on Mondays, but there is staff out there and they're educated on everything trails. They have the trip planning opportunity there, which means they can get access to lodging information, restaurant information, and not just in Volusia County trails, but on every county along the coast to coast and every county along the St. Johns River to Sea Loop. It was a big job. IT person had done a great job. She's sitting in the audience. Nancy Church did a great job doing that. And you're able to click on bits of information. You're able to click, then access their own tourist development centers in other counties and access lodging and restaurant information. The goal there was to plan your trip right from that location. Say a week trip going from east to west, you got all the information that you need there. There is an interactive touch screen panel which folks can go in there and access the information that they need. It also links up to the FDOT Sun Trail program, where all of the trail sections that are being built by their FDOT number, by funding and by time of development. And that's right there on that screen, and it's important. So someone comes in, hey, when is the West Orange Trail gap? When is that going to be completed? You'll be able to click on there, access that information. Oh, it's funded in next year's budget. It's $320,000, right there from the interactive screen. Guided tour program, they run tours, bike tours right out of DeBerry Hall right now. So and I think they do it once or twice a week. And then they have trail events and they help manage some of the trail event programming out there. All right, next slide. So next step, so we're going to finish up the draft plan, right? We're pretty close. I would say we're 80% done in a raw format. It's in a Word document. It's going to have to probably pull in like an Illustrator, something to put it in a more professional document before we are in a format where we're ready to show it to the public for comment, right? So we'll have that draft completed here, hopefully. I don't want to give you a date, soon, because I'm still waiting on 4 pieces of information from cities to include into the plan. And then once we have that, we are, as a partner, we are going to reach out to the Alliance. We're going to work directly with them if there's any missing big pieces of information. And then we'll have it on our website, right? So folks can comment and tell us what they'd like to see or what's missing, or if they want a new trail somewhere that we haven't thought about. And then we're going to meet with the public, both on the east side and on the west side. It'll be posted. It'll be after hours. So if someone's working, someone can access the meeting. We'll have maps up there and go through the plan itself and then receive comment. And then we'll take those comments, compile them, and then modify the plan. Ultimately, it goes to the Volusia County Council for presentation and adoption. I'm assuming somewhere along the line, I'll be asked to bring it before you all, before I bring it to the council. So anyway, that's where we're at. Any questions?
Terrific, though. Thank you for the update. I really appreciate it.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
It's good. Thank you. All right. Moving ahead.
Actually, I would like, Tim, I do want to commend your team. I know this part does not come from ECHO monies, but the keeping everything clean, keeping everything working, it's fantastic. Not only just along the trail, but within the parks themselves. And that's the kind of stuff people don't realize. That's what tax dollars go towards. And your team does a great job. And I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. I'll pass that along. Thanks a lot.
And Pat Northey would like to speak also.
Thanks. Just a couple things. One, Tim, very, very nice report. I'm appreciative of all the hard work that you all have put into it, considering that the council did not approve an allocation for an outside source. I know it has been a lot of hours and a lot of labor for everybody, and I'm grateful for that because it was very much needed. My specific question on how we're getting the information from the cities. Do you have because I think that was part of what I had wanted to see. It wasn't just the master trails, the 3 master trails, but also all those little trails that go off from there. Are we collecting that information as well, so that when we say we have a master trails, we have a master trails?
Yeah, and that's the goal of what we are trying to achieve here. Because yeah, if we just talk Volusia County trails, I think it wouldn't benefit the user, the city constituents better, right? So having one data source for everything that you just described was where we were heading here, which is why we've been reaching out to the cities, which we've got a lot of information from the cities already. And that information that they're sending to us, which comes in either a GIS, ArcGIS data file, or in a map format with their plan on where their trails are going, what's future trails, what's existing trails, and that's going to be included in the master plan by city. And so you'll have a good idea of where the cities are going in terms of their development plan. And those plans, they show street ends, where the trails are. I don't think I've seen any like trailhead information, really. It's really just where the trails are, not where the trailheads are. So there might be something where we can try to get some trailhead information. But yes, you'll be able to look at this document, this one source document, and know where all the trails are and all the cities and the county, and where the future trails are going to be in the cities and in the county.
Well, I think the trailhead information is critically important, because I would guess that this information that we're putting together will be gleaned by others to use in advertising, by the tourism authorities. I know they're very interested in the trails. So I think having the trailhead information where you can access the trail is critically important to this project. And I hope we don't lose that piece of it.
I'll make sure we have their trailhead information, and even if I have to get it in a separate format, and I think we have it in a separate format, but we'll make sure that it's notated and included in the plan.
Okay, and then two other, one question, one comment. You mentioned the Heart of Florida Trail. Have they been approved by the state for funding? I only thought it was the Coast to Coast and the River to Sea.
Right. So the Heart of Florida was not, there's only 2 priority trails that are selected.
Right. Okay.
Funding through completion, and that's St. John's and Coast to Coast. However, a third of the Sun Trail monies are used for trails in the OGT priority trail network that are not funded in, Coast to Coast or St. John. So every year or so, FDOT will put up a call for projects for all those trails that are outside the Coast to Coast and outside the St. John's River to Sea Loop, but are a part of the Office of Greenways and Trails Priority Trail Network, which the Heart of Florida is. That whole section of trail is within OGT's Priority Trail Network. So every section of that is eligible for Sun Trail funding. It's just via grant and not an allocation.
Okay, that clarifies. So thank you for that. And one, I'm a board member of the Alliance. We can certainly add ECHO onto that. I don't even think that we missed that, and that was not intentional. Certainly ECHO has been instrumental in the county's plan. Finally, one of the things that I'm looking for, and I don't know if the other members are interested in it, but we have that 1.5 million allocation annually. And I think I would like to see how that allocation, maybe over maybe a 5-year trail program, much like we do a road program. What are we using those dollars for? And in that year, so that I have people ask me, why did the county need to add another $500,000? I said, well, we're trying to do some retrofitting. We've got trails that are 25 years old that need to be resurfaced, and that would be helpful.
Yeah.
I see Brad whispering in your ear.
Yeah. So what you'll see in this document, because it's already it's embedded in there, is I've got all of the ECHO funding allocated, including the fund balance within the trail, amenity development, parking lots, restrooms, resurfacing is all allocated by year over the next, I think it's 10 years. And I'm up to, I think it's over $20 million just over the first 10 years.
Well,
So
that's terrific. Thank you. Well done.
Yeah, you'll see all that allocated by year and what's going to go in by when. Now, one thing I want to say here. So as I find other funding sources that I could use that are not ECHO or, local funds, I will use those funds first and then circle back to ECHO funds as I need to, right? So if it turns out that, and I know this is coming down the pike, there's going to be some additional trail funding coming from the federal government. It's a part of the infrastructure program. I think there are 40 different revenue sources that are going to be eligible for trails, to develop trails using those federal dollars. So as I identify them and I go apply for them, anything that's in that amenity plan that is in this document, if I get money for that, then I take that money out of that year for ECHO and I replace it with those federal dollars. And then I can use those ECHO funds later on down the road. That's the goal, right? And it looks like there's going to be a lot of opportunity for that. Other question?
Thank you.
Okay. See you.
Mr. Chair, if I knew Pat Northey was going to talk that much, I wouldn't have made the motion to let her in.
Mr. Patterson, I'll deal with you later.
Okay, well, with that, we will move on to our next item, which is the needs survey discussion. And Kendra will introduce it.
Yes, so in your agenda package, we included the draft of the needs survey that we have come up with. I know it was discussed a little bit earlier today, so I just wanted to mention that we had drafted it and it's at the back of the agenda. So any comments or suggestions?
And it may be a moot point at this juncture because we are going to gather some feedback from the workshops with the E and the O, the E and the H, I'm sorry. So it's up to you to have discussion as what you'd like to do with the survey.
Yeah, I really thought those were two different things. I would hate to have to wait for the workshops before we create the need survey. I mean, it seems to me the survey or surveys, which I would suggest, should be done independent of that conversation. And in order just to speed it along and to try to get it out there as soon as we can. And versus belaboring it, I just think we have to be, we need to target two different surveys. One targets the entities, the corporations, the cities, and the county for that matter, and one targets the public as a whole. I think that's the way to be most efficient within the survey and to get the information we're after. And the survey that goes to the entities versus the public should concentrate on vision and timelines. It should push these guys into thinking through what they may want in the future. So at least we get some idea back from them. That's my impression.
Jason.
Question, Brad. What were you thinking about timeline if this was standalone and approved to be sent out?
So we're in the process, I will say that we're in the process of acquiring a software program where we can do electronic surveys, also to help with our annual reporting. So it really depends on how, we actually, I think, already have this survey in the free version of the software, but as soon as we can get it purchased.
And so who gets this survey?
So the public would get this survey based on, and that was our vision initially, which would also include the municipality. So we have a master list of everyone who we've ever engaged with or received funding. So we'd send it to them, of course. Our community information team would push it out on social. We do a press release. So just like any other feedback mechanism that the county uses, we would push it through multiple channels to get as many responses as possible.
I would just like to, I'm not sure I want to bore the whole committee, but I have a background in statistical analysis and surveys in particular, and I would be happy to give you some of my wording for your questions, because some of them are a little bit leading, and that's something you don't want to do in a survey. So I don't think I need to bore the rest of the committee, but I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Brad. I think it's a good survey, but I do agree that there are probably some words that could be changed. I hate it when I see dissatisfaction. But that's the word that jumps out to me that I would change. But other than that, I think it's a really good start.
Yeah, well, okay. I think it's fine too for the public, but I don't think it's fine relative to the entities themselves. And if the group as a whole and the county wishes to send this out, I think we should expect to get limited information from these entities that I thought the needs survey was to look at. So I just want to make that point, because when it comes down and it's done and nonprofits are answering these questions as we see them or anything close to these, I don't think we're going to get the input we need. That's my gut feeling.
The way this is written, even with some changes to the wording, it seems to be written towards the average individual, the public, not some entity that has experience with ECHO, whether the entity is a nonprofit or a municipality, or who has a specific vision to implement. This seems solely
it's a public
a
survey.
gauge to,
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's just not gauged
yeah.
to the folks that are presenting us applications, right? It's just not. I mean, it's not designed that way.
I think given that, 70% of the people who voted to renew ECHO, that says something. However, as ECHO is moving forward, what do people, what is their experience? And it would give us an idea of what the average public thinks needs improvement and/or what is exceeding expectation. I don't see how it hurts, but it seems totally geared to the public and is not that needs assessment kind of, I don't even like that word, needs assessment. It's not that.
So where do we go from here to make this move forward?
I have a few comments too. When's our next meeting? Our next committee meeting?
April.
Originally when we started this, or started talking about this, it was last summer. We did not have we weren't accepting any grants until this year. And we had that cycle thrown upon us. And then we had this other cycle thrown upon us to try and catch up. I think when we do this, I think we need to take our time, get the right questions down. I know, having watched Advent Health do their needs assessment every 3 years, it takes them a few months, a few drafts to get those questions in order and to get that out. They also have, benchmarks. They need to get a return of 3,000 responses for the data to really be useful to them countywide. We have 17 municipalities. That means each municipality, area really only has 200 responses. Plus, we have the county and we have other people that we're going to be sending this to. I would like to come back at our next meeting with input from everyone as to to really think about what we want to ask. We have been making changes to the grant. We've been asked to, include, living shorelines as standalone. We've got, there's Dream Green that has, water goats. I didn't even know what a water goat was until 2 months ago. So as we move forward, I just want to make sure that we're asking questions to really get a response from the people who voted for this, why they voted for it. And even those people that did not vote for it, what do you want to see happen? Because a lot of people I talk to, they think ECHO is only about the environment. That's the only thing, which I am always amazed at, because we've been doing this for 20 years and there's plaques up all over the place. But there's a lot of people, including politicians, that think it just has to do with the environment. So, I don't know. Reading this, I think this is a nice draft. I think it's a little vague. I would like to get into more pertinent questions somehow, but I think that's everybody really thinking about it and coming back to the table.
Well, if that is the board's desire, then my recommendation would be, let's not have the staff be guessing that if we're going to delay this, then it's incumbent on us as board members to get very specific comments and or questions to the staff in advance of our April meeting, so that in April, we could see something different that already reflects our input. I would hate to see us spend a whole lot of time in April going through each individual question when they could present us a different survey.
I would actually like to see some of the surveys that like Ormond did. I heard about it, but couldn't find it anywhere. I responded to the Orange City one because, well, I lived there, so I saw it.
So as a response to Mr. Alt, so I believe some of these questions were from the Ormond survey. We took, I think Orange City, Ormond's, and several, we took the Stetson survey that they did. We took a few items from it as well. So we kind of took items that we thought were pertinent from different surveys.
Well, if I could comment, I do think the survey looks like it's geared towards the general public more than the end user, the people that apply to our grants. But that's just my comment. This is a difficult topic when you start asking for like this needs assessment type of thing. It's like everyone probably has a different definition of what that is. And a not-for-profit would have a different definition of it than just the guy that lives down the street, So.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe what we do is just try, I think this survey is close on the public. I think what we need to do is just concentrate on what our questions would be in a different survey that went out to any entity that might be looking at an application. And I think, and when we can do that, we can provide questions that we think are relevant. We'll do that. If they're receptive and want it, we'll do that. We could, at the other side, we could just lay it at the county's feet and say, hey, we need to do that. And then you come back in April and we look at it and say, oh, that's good or bad. I don't, you tell us how you want us to approach it, but I think there needs to be 2 surveys. And not only that, I think we're going to have to work diligently to try to get the survey to the right people. And that means every nonprofit that is out there, not just who might come by on the website or who picks up Facebook. It needs to get to the right people so that we can get a proper vision on what the needs are, particularly of the nonprofits. And municipalities are going to be easy to target. I mean, we know what they are. And the county, we got that. But the nonprofits, I just think what's going to happen is we're going to get even if we get a survey that's targeted and asks for what their interests and needs are, and they look at it and get, vision with it that's beyond this year, say. I think the problem is you're just not going to get it in the right hands. I think that's a challenge to get to the right audience. And I'm willing to work on whatever. I would put time into it. But keep in mind, we're hanging our hat quite a bit on the needs, right? This needs survey is essentially, what we think is the foundation of where we're going, right? Where are we going? And if we're only as good as a survey, otherwise we might not even approach it. So I think it's important, but I think it's got to be put together right. And I like what we've got, but it's just public driven. It's consumer related, and we need more one-to entities specifically. So as far as Kendra or Brad, tell us what you would like. Would you want us to give you questions that you think would work? Would you prefer to put together questions to provide back to us for our input? How would you like to approach it?
It's really the pleasure of the board, what you would like to do. I think what's worked in the past is if we provide a draft and there's some feedback, if that's acceptable.
All right.
One of our goals that we just approved was to try and do a workshop with with the historical board. Is there a way to set that up in February or March? And if we're able to do that workshop, then we can drill back down into this and try and get this accomplished so they could get it out by the end of March. And by the time we get through our next cycle, which is June, we can start addressing this. So we would already have those results back. This isn't going to help us on the next cycle starting next month.
Mr. Chair, I don't have any real big problems with this assessment survey because I find it is geared towards the people who are paying the bills for ECHO, the citizens out there. The nonprofits aren't paying, it's the people who support nonprofits. But I think, the general public is the one that we should be targeting and get the information from. So I want to make sure that we go out to the taxpayers and make sure they have a say-so in this process.
And not to mention that a lot of folks from the general public are part of these nonprofits as well. So it's a double effort. I would also agree that the general public should be brought into this conversation in the survey.
Okay, well, I don't have any further comments on this. It sounds like this is something that's going to be moving along over the next couple of meetings. It doesn't sound like it'll be solved quickly. So unless there's any other comments on this topic,
I'll just make one last one.
Okay,
At the beginning of the survey, since you're doing this online, is there a way to, at the very beginning, just have a link to the ECHO dashboard that says this is what we already have? I think that goes to what the lady who keeps raising her hand said too, that we have certain things. And if we could link to that dashboard, because you did a good job creating that, then people can use that as a reference point.
Okay, I think the point's well taken. And with that, I'd suggest we move on to the next topic, which is chair and vice chair election. So I would like to call for nominations from the board.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Pat Morthy as the chair.
Second.
I'm trying to get out of trouble from Northie.
Okay, I think that's it. Are there any other nominations? Well, I guess we should have a call for a vote, huh? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Congratulations, Pat.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. I was not prepared for that, so I will do my best to guide us forward. Thank you so much for that. It's an honor. Thank you.
Great. Well, you certainly just are very well deserving of it, and will run things very efficiently. So with that, oh gosh, number 7 is advisory committee comments.
We need to elect a vice chair.
Oh, vice chair? Oh, we have to have a vice
Shall I
chair
nominate
too?
you, sir?
Who?
Shall I nominate you, sir?
Me?
Vice chair.
Oh gosh.
Switch to switcheroo.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Uh-oh. Sounds like I won. Thanks, Stacy. Oh gosh. Okay, I thought I could slip out of that one, but no. So number 7, advisory committee comments.
And as a question, how often, I forget, how often do we have to go through this election? Is it once every 2 years?
It's annually.
It's
So
annually.
we had not been doing it annually, but our enabling resolution says annually, so we'll come back each year.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, are there any other committee comments?
Can I make one?
Of course.
I've also been making this comment probably since 2006 for our boards. We have mandatory workshops for people applying for grants, whether it's the community cultural grant or the ECHO grant. Those meetings are slated for 2 hours and they always finish up in about an hour. I would like to use that second part of the hour for you to possibly educate or provide some sort of education with these applicants on, what we're looking for, or what a feasibility study should be, what a business plan is. That is how United Arts runs their programs. I just think there could be a little bit better use of that time. And I think that has been lacking. It's not because of the review boards, it's not because of staff. However, there are organizations that don't really know how to operate a nonprofit, yet they're operating one. I know there have been offers from the VCCA to hold workshops for nonprofits. I've spoken to the county manager on multiple occasions, this one and the last one. They always say, oh, great idea, but nothing ever moves forward. So I would just like you to think about that, Brad, and see how we could use that entire time to make sure that the applicants are actually supplying all of the information that comes up in our review meetings. That's it.
We can certainly work on that, but we give broad outlines and templates in the application. And so we can suggest kind of some structure and some good examples to provide to our applicants. But those broad outlines preclude us from requiring more than what the broad outline is. But I'd point taken, and we will work on that.
But if we could show like examples of good grants.
Okay, are there any other committee comments? Okay, with that, meeting adjourned.